You know that specific physical feeling you get when you're scrolling your phone or maybe you're just in a meeting and you hear someone say something that is just wrong.
Hmm.
I don't mean I disagree wrong. I mean like 2 plus 2 is 5 wrong.
Hmm.
You feel that little spike of adrenaline.
It's the corruption reflex. It's almost biological.
Exactly. It's like a reflex. You're driving, someone merges without a blinker,
Yeah.
and instantly you're not just observing a car.
No, you're writing a whole character assessment.
You're the judge, the jury, and the executioner all in about 3 seconds. We all do this. We walk around with this invisible ruler, measuring everyone we meet.
It's the universal human default setting. We have to categorize to survive. Safe or unsafe, competent, incompetent, good, bad.
But that is exactly what we are trying to dismantle today. And I have to say, the stack of documents we're diving into, texts like The Doer, The Word, The Way to Eternal Life, and these essays on humility, they don't just say judging is mean.
No, it's a much deeper argument.
They argue it's actually logically impossible for us to do it correctly.
That's the core conflict right there. It's this tug of war between two identities. The source material argues you can be a judge, what it even calls a legislator, or you can be a doer.
But not both.
You cannot be both.
And usually when we talk about this kind of stuff, it feels very, a bit Sunday school.
Sure. Be nice to your neighbor.
Right. But honestly, reading through these sources, the vibe I got was more like a psychological thriller. It's about how our brains trick us into thinking we're right, specifically when we're dead wrong.
It's not about etiquette. It's about existence. The mission of this deep dive is to unpack this argument that stepping down from the judge's seat is really the only rational move a human can make.
And the stakes, according to the text, are incredibly high.
Incredibly high. We aren't just talking about having a better day. We're talking about the path to eternal life.
Which is a heavy phrase, and we are going to get to what that actually means later. Spoiler alert, It's not just floating on a cloud. But first, let's talk about why we judge. The text has this concept called the relativity of judgment.
Right. This is where we have to start. The sources make a claim that, honestly, is quite difficult for most of us to just swallow.
Which is?
It says that the standards we hold, the things we think are just common sense, they're actually not absolute.
Okay, hold on, though. Let's play devil's advocate for a second. If I say don't punch people in the face, that feels pretty absolute to me.
Of course.
Are the texts saying everything is relative? That there's no right or wrong?
Not exactly. It's not saying truth doesn't exist. It's saying your specific version of it is probably warped by your own experience. The text describes how we naturally ostracize anyone who is different.
How so?
Well, if you're a big punctuality person, the person who's 5 minutes late isn't just delayed. In your head, they're disrespectful. You've just assigned a moral value to a preference.
Okay, I feel a little called out.
We all are. The source material says, and this is a quote, "One's own standards are not absolute or universally valid. We mistake our personal preferences for universal laws."
This leads to the part of the text that really tripped me up. I call it the mirror effect. Basically says, hey, genius, from the other person's perspective, you're the weirdo.
It just flips the camera angle. We operate from this center of the universe mentality. I'm the protagonist. Everyone else is a supporting character.
Right.
But the text warns that we're relying on short-sighted views. We're looking through a keyhole and thinking we see the whole room.
Okay, let's ground this. Imagine a workplace. You have one person who's super structured, the color-coded spreadsheet type, and then you have another person who's a chaotic, creative, messy desk, ideas flying everywhere.
Perfect example.
So the structured person looks at the messy desk and thinks, this person is lazy, they're disorganized, they're failing. That's the judgment.
Exactly. They're using their own clean desk standard to measure the other person. But the text invites us to look in the mirror.
So from the creative person's perspective.
From the creative person's perspective, the spreadsheet guy is rigid, inflexible, maybe even wasting time on formatting instead of innovating. To the creative person, the structured guy is the one who's wrong.
So who's right?
And that's the trap. As long as they're both sitting in that judge's seat, they are both imprisoned. The text says we become prisoners of our own thoughts. When you're so sure your standard is the only standard, you lose the ability to connect with reality. You're just fighting a war against everyone who isn't you.
Prisoners of our own thoughts. That is such a claustrophobic image. It's like we build a cell out of our own opinions and then lock ourselves inside.
And this isn't just about, office squabbles. The sources escalate this idea significantly. They use a historical case study to show what happens when this prison of thought is taken to the extreme.
You're talking about the interaction between the Jewish religious leaders and Jesus. Okay, I want to spend some real time here because this was, for me, the most fascinating part of the reading. Usually when you hear this story, it's framed like a cartoon. The religious leaders are just these mustache-twirling villains who hate good things.
Right. We engage in hindsight bias. We know the end of the story, so we judge the characters. But the text asks us to look at it from the leader's perspective at the time.
And the text explains why they rejected Jesus. It wasn't because they just wanted to be evil. It was because they were trapped in their own established thinking.
Think about it. These were men who had dedicated their entire lives to studying the law. They had a framework, they had precedent, they knew exactly what the Messiah was supposed to look like, how he should act, who he should hang out with.
They had the ultimate checklist.
The ultimate checklist. And then Jesus shows up, and the text notes explicitly He did and said things they had never seen or heard before.
And that's the friction point, right? The new versus the old.
It's a data error. They tried to input Jesus into their Messiah algorithm, and it just returned a syntax error. He didn't fit the mold.
He hung out with the wrong people, broke their Sabbath rules, spoke with this weird kind of authority.
So because it didn't fit their previous experience, they couldn't just say, oh, that's different. They had to say, this is wrong.
This is incorrect.
This is incorrect. And this leads to the most, frankly, terrifying irony in the source material.
Which is what?
The text points out that the leaders crucified Jesus thinking they were serving God.
I had to read that sentence twice. They thought they were the good guys.
They believed their judgment was a righteous act. They thought they were protecting the faith from a heretic. They were 100% certain.
And 100% wrong.
Tragically wrong. The source's verdict is that this wrong judgment actually ended up dishonoring God.
So they're trying to honor him.
But because they relied on their own limited understanding, those short-sighted views, they insulted the very authority they claimed to serve.
That is the cautionary tale. It scares me, honestly. It shows that certainty is not the same thing as truth. You can feel righteous indignation, you can feel like you're defending the truth, and be actively fighting against it.
It forces a really uncomfortable question. If the experts of that time, the people who knew the most, could be that blind because of their assumptions, what are we blind to right now?
So if judging is this dangerous, if I could be so sure and yet so wrong, what's the alternative? I can't just turn off my brain. I still see things happen.
Of course not.
The text introduces specific roles here. It talks about lanes.
It uses legal terminology, which I find very helpful. It defines the role of the legislator and the role of the doer.
Okay, let's break that down. The legislator.
The legislator is the lawmaker, the one who sets the standard. In a, cosmic sense, this is God or reality itself. Then you have the judge, the one who evaluates if people are meeting that standard.
And the text is pretty blunt here. It says, we are not legislators or judges.
Correct. That position is filled.
So that just leaves us with the doer or observer. But I have to push back a bit here. Being a doer sounds passive. It sounds like being a robot. Just follow orders. Is that what this is advocating? Mindless obedience?
That's a common objection, but let's look closer. It's not about being mindless, it's about being role appropriate.
Okay.
Think about a professional sports game. You have the referee and you have the player.
Right, I'm with you.
The referee's job is to judge, to watch for infractions, blow the whistle. The player's job is to play the game, execute the plays. Now, what happens if the player spends the entire game trying to referee?
They'd be a terrible player.
Yeah.
They're running around yelling at the other team, yelling at the ref, measuring the grass.
Exactly. They are ineffective as a player because they're trying to do a job they are not equipped for. The text is arguing that when we judge, we are players trying to be referees. We stop doing the word because we're too busy analyzing how everyone else is doing it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not about being a robot, it's about focus.
And it's about authority. To be a doer of the word requires a real shift in posture. It means handing the authority of judgment back to God. It's a resignation letter.
A resignation from what?
You are resigning from the job of general manager of the universe.
Which honestly sounds exhausting anyway. I'm terrible at managing my own inbox, let alone the moral trajectory of everyone I meet.
It is exhausting, and that's why the text frames this as a relief. But there's a strategic element to it, too. It all ties back to humility.
We hear humility and we think self-deprecation. Oh, I'm not that great.
No, the text defines humility almost mathematically. It's an acknowledgement of data limitations.
What do you mean?
The text says we have short-sighted views. We cannot see the hearts of others. We don't know their trauma, their history, their intentions. We can't see the future. Therefore, we are statistically incapable of judging correctly.
So humility isn't saying I'm trash. Humility is saying I don't have the full security clearance to view this file.
Precisely. If I try to judge you, I'm trying to solve a complex equation with 90% of the variables missing. I'm going to get the answer wrong.
So what's the logical position?
The only logical position, the only one that aligns with reality, is to step back and say, I am a doer. My job is to watch my own steps, not yours.
Okay, so we step down. We stop trying to be the referee. What do we get out of it? Because in modern self-help, this is usually where people say, and then you'll find inner peace. You'll be zen. You'll be calm.
And that can be a nice byproduct. But I want to be very clear here because you could miss this distinction. I looked through all the source material, and inner peace is not the headline promise.
It isn't. What is?
The text promises eternal life.
Wow. That is a massive jump.
Yeah.
We went from feeling calm to immortality. But what does that actually mean in this context? Because eternal life can sound like a religious buzzword.
It does. But let's look at how the text constructs it. It contrasts eternal life with death or destruction. In the context of the Pharisees, the judges, their path led to destruction because they were in error. They were fighting reality.
Right, they fought the truth, so they lost.
So eternal life here isn't just about duration. It's about freedom from error.
Huh?
It's a safety mechanism.
Wait, unpack that for me. Freedom from error.
Think about it like walking through a minefield. The judge thinks they know where all the mines are, so they run confidently across the field. But their map is wrong.
So they blow up.
They blow up. That's the path of the Pharisees.
And the doer.
The doer admits they don't know where the mines are, so they follow the footprints of the guide. They follow the instructions. Step here, don't step there. By sticking to the role of the doer, they navigate the field safely. They survive. That is the way to eternal life.
That changes the whole vibe. It's not about earning a reward. It's about not walking off a cliff.
Exactly. If you judge, you risk that great irony. You risk dishonoring God while trying to serve him. By staying in the lane of the doer, you're insulated from that risk. You can't be arrogantly wrong if you never claimed to be right in the first place.
That's fascinating. It's a protective stance. And the text does mention a practical side effect, too, regarding other people.
Yes. Conflict prevention. The text says that by acknowledging our standards aren't universal, we stop the cycle of rejection. If I admit my clean desk standard is just my standard, I stop ostracizing the messy person. I stop creating enemies.
It de-escalates the war. If I'm not the legislator, I don't have to enforce the law on you. I can just worry about my own adherence to the word.
And that is the way. It's a move from a complex, conflict-ridden life of trying to control others to a simple, humble life of obedience. The source says this simplicity is the key.
It really reframes the whole idea of a moral life. It's not about how strictly you can point out everyone else's flaws.
No.
It's about how strictly you can stay in your own lane.
It brings us right back to that sports analogy. The best players aren't watching the other players form. They're watching the ball. The text is telling us, keep your eye on the ball.
So let's bring this home. We've covered a lot. The arrogance of judgment, the mirror effect, the tragedy of the Pharisees, and this offer of freedom from error. It's a lot to process.
It is, but I think it boils down to a call for intellectual and spiritual modesty. The source material argues that we are prisoners of our own thoughts. We build these little cells made of our opinions, our experiences, our rightness.
You'll just sit inside them.
We sit inside them miserable, judging everyone who walks by.
And true humility is the key that unlocks the door.
Yes, it allows us to walk out of the cell, to say, I might be wrong, my view might be too small.
It challenges us to pause. The next time we feel that flash of certainty, that little dopamine hit of I am right and you are wrong, we need to ask ourselves a question.
Which hat am I wearing right now?
Am I trying to be the judge?
Or am I willing to be the doer? It's a difficult switch to flip because judging feels good. It feels powerful. It feels like we're in control.
But the text reminds us that power is an illusion.
And a dangerous one at that.
It's dangerous because, as we saw with the historical example, you could be dead wrong while feeling completely right. You can be the villain of the story while thinking you're the hero.
That's the lingering thought for me. The people in the text who thought they were serving God the most were actually the ones most blind to him.
That brings us to the end of this dunk dive, but I want to leave you with a question to mull over. And I warn you, it is not a comfortable one. It's derived straight from that historical paradox we just discussed.
It's a question meant to be asked in the mirror.
If the people who were most certain of their righteousness were actually the ones who missed the truth completely, what assumptions are you holding on to right now that might be blinding you? What if the thing you are most right about is actually the thing that's keeping you from seeing the bigger picture?
It's a scary question, but asking it might just be the first step toward that freedom the text talks about.
Thanks for deep diving with us.